It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, August 7th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's getting into the nitty gritty about Matvei Michkov today.
Yeah, we're really digging in.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You can find our show over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we are going to get into a really fantastic conversation about Matvei Michkov with David StLouis from Elite Prospects, EP Rinkside. And he did such a deep dive into Michkov's instincts and what he has to improve in his game. Fantastic conversation, and we will get to that momentarily. Just want to remind you of our weekly poll. If you haven't voted yet, based on what we know now, which World Junior Summer Showcase standout prospect makes his Flyers debut first? There's some good choices over there, so check it out. Link in the show notes, and it's over on our YouTube channel. And here's our conversation with David. Our guest today is David StLouis from EP Rinkside, and he did a really cool breakdown of Matvei Michkov, so we thought we'd talk to him about it. Welcome, David.
Really happy to be here.
So obviously the decision for him to come over sooner rather than later kind of prompted you to look into him a little bit more, but like, what specifically were you looking for in his game when you did this incredible breakdown?
I think I just wanted to show a different side of his game because maybe he plays in the KHL, so you don't get access to his tape as much, and you can't watch him as much because of copyright issues, and there's not many videos on YouTube and all this. My video is still up by the way, so I'm happy about this. But sometimes they tend to take down content about him, so I don't think people, despite knowing his numbers and his reputation and his Michigan goals, they don't know his game that much, honestly, because I see him portrayed as this like Connor McDavid type of player who was really speedy and scores off the rush that much, but he's much more of a cerebral type of player who is very opportunistic and very, very good at anticipating the game. So I think it's really his hockey sense that's super interesting, and you look at that in the details of the game. So you really have to break down his decisions to really show why he's scoring so much and why he's so smart and why he's so exciting. So that's what I love doing, breaking down the details of the game. Honestly, looking at prospects is almost an excuse to do that. And Michkov is one of the most fun prospects to break down because there are so many interesting details, so many interesting reads that he makes.
Yeah, so you brought up the word Michigan goals, and so of course John Tortorella hates Michigan goals. So my question for you is, do you think he will outright tell him don't try it, or do you think Michkov will hear from the other players don't try it? And do you think that'll be hard for him because it's in his arsenal? Like he tries quite a few.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. The relationship between them, it's going to be really interesting this season for multiple reasons, and this is one of them because it's really part of his game. Like for some players, it's just a trick that they sometimes pull off. He really bases part of his offensive game on this move, really behind the net. Like he knows it's in his arsenal, and other defensemen and opponents know this in the KHL too, so they have to respect that, and opens other things for him. So I guess in the NHL, it could be the same for him. But the thing is, in the NHL, players get pressured more behind the net than in the KHL. So I don't think it's going to have that many occasions to try and pull it off. So if there's friction there, I don't anticipate that's going to be big friction because it won't happen that much for him anyway. It's not something that's going to carry over that much. I don't anticipate that the coach is really going to tell him to not do it. Like if he's this if he's creative from the start and pulling off plays that others can't do and really driving the play like this, he's going to get more permissions than most players, I think.
So in the Tortorella system, continuing to talk about what Tortorella likes and doesn't like, there's a team defense mentality and a lot of shot blocking, all of that. Based on what Michkov has said himself so far, he knows he's going to have to get better at defensive play. Do you think he has it in him as a player to shift that mentality?
I think he's uber competitive as a player. It's just that it doesn't show in the typical way. So he wants to score, and its competitive nature shows up in that. Like I'm going to talk about his offense, and I'll come back to his defense because they're linked. But he's a player that's not. It's not like those softer KHL playmakers that we've seen come to the NHL in past years. Like he's very inside driven. He's super competitive in the sense that he drives the net all the time. He has that mentality to want to make the best play all the time. And I think that could translate to the defensive game too, because he's a hard player. He has those hard skills to a point. Like he's a smaller player, but he has those hard skills to a point. So if he thinks that the way to win in the NHL is to block shots and get in those lanes and to get his stick in passing lanes, he's going to become better at this. It's going to be a hard learning curve for him because he's not doing that much. It's in his ability, but that's not the way he thinks the game and the way he operates on the ice. So he's going to have to shift some things in his mentality. It may take a bit of time, but I think he could get there. It's just that it depends if he can reroute that desire to win and super competitive in the right channels in the NHL, really. So it's more of a question, but it's not a giant concern for me. I think it's possible for him.
Yeah, just to let listeners know, about a year ago, I broke down during his season where he was scoring from, like you said, and it was a lot around the net. And so that's up on sportsology.com, my website. So people could still check that out. But, for a player his size, although he is strong, like he's got a big neck and he can get there, and that's good. Now, you talked about the all-around game, and so it does make me wonder why in 3 years Scott never really gave him a chance. And I don't know if you ever heard anything about it. I never really heard anything about it, but it just seems like either they were just like, listen, you got a lot to learn, and they just kind of did it like that, or there was some sort of friction. I don't know, but like, did you ever get a good reason why they never gave him a shot?
I don't have inside information on this. I think the main factor is that veterans get more ice time, more of a say in that team. It's just like that kind of culture, and it doesn't fit a young star player who's coming in, who's probably more talented than some of these players, but he doesn't get as much ice time really because the coach is just respecting these other players more. I think that's the main factor. There might be a reputation of ice issues, things like this that may contribute to it, but I think that's more minor for me. And maybe the style of play, like I don't know Scott's system that well, but maybe the way he played in preseason games and things like this, maybe it didn't fit like their strategies, and maybe that just contributed to him not making the team. But I think the main factor is really players that are older tend to get more opportunities in that team.
Well, I'll follow up with, how like a lot of times, and I don't want to stereotype, but a lot of times young Russian players tend to overhandle the puck at times. And I think he is going to have to learn how to like tone that down in the NHL. And maybe that was a part of it too.
Yeah, I think he will. That's not a big concern with me, but for me, but it's true that he then does tend to overhandle the puck, and he did that more in his draft year. But it's a bit better now, and he's a good play builder too. Like his game in transition is to make to rush ahead, attract pressure, and then turn back and pass it behind. Like he understands how to create space for others, for himself, how to use the given goals and all this. So it's all in his arsenal. So I don't think he's going to struggle with the pace part of the NHL game or handling the puck too much and putting himself in the corner and not having any kind of play. Like he knows when defenders are closing on him and when he has to move the puck away. It's just that I think for a while he just considered that him having the puck on his stick was better than teammates having it. So maybe he just kept it for because that was a better play for him. But now that he's in the KHL playing, he didn't have a great team, but he learned to trust his teammates and that he had no choice but to move the puck sometimes.
We'll have more with David StLouis coming up next.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because you can avoid all that busy work. I use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insights on every team in the league. You can catch me there on Fridays. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to get to your mailbag questions later in the show. On Friday's show, we're going to talk about the lack of a prospect tournament for the Flyers and what that means for prospect development and just the preseason ramp up in general. And now here's the rest of our conversation with David StLouis about Matvei Michkov. So one of the things you focused on in your video analysis was that he's able to stretch the defense really well. And I'm just wondering, like, I don't know that he'll be able to do that as much in the NHL because the speed is greater in terms of closing those gaps. But like the defensemen honestly are smarter and play a more system-based game in the NHL. Like, what do you think is going to happen there? Like, do you think he'll be able to do that in the NHL?
I think he's going to have less opportunities to, like, there are two main plays that are in his game that produce the most offense for him. Like, it's blowing the zone a bit early on breakouts and getting the puck and then pushing back the defense and forcing them to scramble and then turning back and passing.
Well, break it down. Don't just say a little bit early. Talk about the Mario Lemieux sort of cheating aspect of that.
Yeah. That's I just start with the stretching the defense part because it's two things. Like, and there are other plays where he just gets the puck and skates ahead and he goes one-on-one with the defender and he makes him back off with deception and he makes the defender unsure of what he's going to do next. So while he does this, he's gaining more space, and then he turns back and hits teammates behind. Like, there are ways in which his game was going to translate well off the rush, and that deception aspect is going to help him a lot. But the other part that I think he's going to have to adapt the most, and that's really blowing the zone. I think with him, like, you kind of have to call it that. Like, it's really offensive cheating because it's clear. Like, with some other players, you can say, oh, maybe that was, or maybe on the line, like but when cheating is when your team doesn't have the puck and you're already out of the zone. Like,
well, no, and you did a good point, a good job of pointing out when he is high and didn't need to be high, he needed to be low. Right. That's where the puck was. That's what you mean,
yeah. And he's really, it's all playing anticipation, and that's really his game. But there are ways he's going to be able to do it in the NHL. Like, when a puck is 50-50, sometimes depending on what the coach is going to enable him to do. When the puck, it's unclear who has possession, you can time your exit out of zone and maybe get the puck. And when your team just had possession and then you blow the zone, that's fine. But it's before that. It's when the opposition clearly has the puck and you anticipate a turnover. You can't do that in the NHL. That's no coach, even if they adapt their system, they won't allow you to do that. That's impossible because the risk is way, way too high. Like, maybe Michkov becomes so good at this that later in his career he gets permission, but I don't expect him to have this kind of permission in his draft year. Like, he's going to have to learn to defend first and read when those opportunities will be right for him first by playing good defense, and then he's going to earn more and more permission, and maybe he's going to be able to stretch those occasions. But right now, the way he plays, it's offensive cheating, and he's better at it than most because he's so good at anticipating
Right.
when he has those occasions that he's creating way more than you should be able to do with those kinds of plays. And like I had a segment in my video, I won't go into details, you can watch it, but there was a defenseman at the line. He got the puck and he was clearly looking to shoot. Like it was someone that Michkov was covering and he was tasked with covering him, but Michkov just went and double pressured that defenseman because he saw that the defenseman was looking to shoot and the shooting line was blocked and that the puck would rebound on one of his teammates and he would have an occasion potentially for a 2-on-1. But that's advanced read. It's reading the play ahead, but also the posture of the defenseman, the way he's handling his stick, what he's going to do next. Like he's really thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead. And there are players where you're not sure that they can do that. With Michkov, the signs are so clear that he's really, really smart that I think he's going to be able to translate that part of his game in the NHL. He's going to have to scale it back just a little, just be more conservative so that he can win more permissions from his coaching staff and show that he can play defense, and then he's going to be able to act on these plays. But right now it's really offensive cheating, and I think you should call it that because that's what it is. That was a lot, sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, yeah, absolutely. So one of the other things that the Flyers do really well is their penalty kill. They have this power kill system, right? And that relies a lot on that kind of anticipation that you've pointed out about Michkov. And we've seen Travis Konechny and Scott Lawton kind of get those breakouts because they're in the right position and they can anticipate that play. Do you think he'd be a good option to add to the mix for that power kill that the Flyers have?
I think it would be really good to give him a spot if you don't want to win this season, because he doesn't have enough skills to really. But yeah, I mean, there's 2 sides to this. If you want to really develop the player, you can put him on a penalty kill and force him to play defense and learn those skills faster. They do that in the AHL with players who struggle
Right.
to defend. Like they do that purposely because they have to sit there and learn to read the play and close the line with their stick. And Michkov can do that. It's just that that's not the way he operates again. So he has to start ingraining those habits even more. So by playing the penalty kill, it would help him. I don't think it would help the team at first, like because he's just too far back in applying those skills really. So it depends how you want to approach it.
Yeah, just I think maybe like down the road is to your point. I think is the way to go.
Yeah, I think there's a world where Michkov becomes a plus defensive player. Like it's not the most realistic projection. Like he's probably going to be always wanting to lean toward offense, but there's a world where his competitiveness gets rerouted to the defensive game and he becomes a plus defender. Again, not the most realistic, but it's possible still because he has those skills and he becomes a good member of the penalty kill and he helps the defense. He helps the Flyers that way.
Travis Konechny, we never thought that would happen for him, and it did. So stranger things have happened.
Smart players figure it out. Like that's the key with Michkov.
No, that's true. Something you unlocked, which was, I'd watched a fair amount of Michkov, but, I haven't been able to watch like all his games. Like you said, I've watched a few full games and a lot of clips thanks to some websites. But I always knew he would never give up on a play, but you really did a good job of showing how he would make plays and kind of force it out of nothing just to kind of keep the goalie honest. And I think that's the sign of a really good player. What do you think about his ability to do that?
He can do. He used to be more of a goal scorer. I think his playmaking got underrated, and he can pretty much do anything. Like the best, he reads what things are open, what things are not open, and he adapts to the play more and more. In his draft year, I think he was forcing a lot of shots because he knew he was going to get the puck back a lot more. Like if he was playing in the MHL, if he forces a shot, it's going to be back on his stick maybe soon because there's a turnover or a pass to him, or he's playing for a better team. When you're playing for Sochi, if you force things, you maybe not going to get the puck back as easier. So I think he's learning to better manage the puck and keep it on his stick and on his teammate's stick. But it's true that like if the Flyers are controlling a power play, he's maybe forcing a shot in and just telling the goalie that he can do that maybe a second time, and then he makes the pass across. Like he's planning ahead, like 2-3 moves ahead, or sometimes 20 seconds ahead too, like when he has more time to set up. So that's part of his hockey sense, forcing things to keep players honest sometimes.
Yeah, and because he's so creative, I wonder if he has like a longer leash in terms of other teams figuring him out quickly? Like his creativity can kind of get him through that period where teams seem to figure some guys out when they're rookies and come in the league, right?
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that I think in his first few months, there's a chance that he struggles a bit more than some people expect, just because he has elite hockey sense, but the tools are not as amazing as other elite prospects we've seen in years past. Like, he can't separate instantly from defenders with his speed, and he's physical, but he's 5'9", 5'10". So there are some elements of battles that he might struggle in at first, but I think he's just going to figure out, like I said. And yes, with his creativity, he's going to figure out more ways to create. And there may come a point where defenders just don't have an answer for him. Like, no matter what they do, he's going to figure out how to abuse their positioning, their movements, and find the better play anyway. But that may take a bit of time. With cerebral player, top hockey sense player, sometimes they figure out the game instantly because they're that smart. Sometimes they have to be in tune with the rhythm of the game and learn to really read where the advantages are before they can really take that next step and perform at the highest level.
Something I thought about, and I thought maybe the Flyers would do this. A lot of times teams, we've seen this with Chara and a lot of different teams, mainly on defense, they'll bring in that veteran defenseman to play with that young player and kind of help him along. And I'm thinking, since he's Russian, should they have signed like a, it didn't have to be Tarasenko, but somebody who's a veteran Russian player that at times during the game could sit next to him on the bench and say, hey, I had trouble with this too. This is what you do. And that's what you do. Do you think they should have done that? I feel like they should have.
Does he speak English at all? Like,
he speaks some English. He understands more than he could verbally say, but he's working on it.
Yeah, so that may be, you want to make players as comfortable as possible, because that removes one element that they have to get adjusted to. And I think that's a good point. Yes, they could have done something like this. Were they available, like those players, though?
I mean, Tarasenko was, as an example. He's the easiest one. He was available to everybody.
I'm not sure what a pairing with Michkov and Tarasenko would have looked like, though. Maybe they some of their weaknesses right now may overlap or things like this. But yeah, I think in a vacuum, it's a good idea in theory too, and it would have helped Michkov. It's just Tarasenko, I'm not sure, and I don't know who else was available, but I think someone who speaks English and was really patient with him could have that kind of role with him too, as long as Michkov really respects them and knows that he can.
I feel like he would respect any veteran Russian player to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I'm sure it would have been the best. Like, I don't know who exactly, but that would have been the best setup possible. And many teams do this. Like, and there's a reason behind this. The more you're comfortable on the ice, off the ice, the more you can perform.
Given that he has come over earlier than expected, he's 19 years old. How would you compare him to other kind of 19-year-olds as opposed to like 21, 22-year-olds and their like chances of making that transition?
The better your tools are, the easier the transition is. You need some kind of hockey sense. Like, you can't be just a fast skater, just a fast stick handler, or a big player. Like, you need to read the game at least an NHL level. But I think not having immense advantages over his peers right now, and being more of a cerebral player, he may need some more time to adjust and maybe some anticipate. Like, I'm just doing off the hype I see on Twitter on this. Not that I'm trying to protect Michkov, but I think it's best to have realistic expectations at first. Like, even in training camp, I think there are maybe moments where Jet Luchenko might look more dynamic than him, just because he can skate twice as fast or something like this. Like, Michkov doesn't have that eye-popping ability. Like, you can recognize him in an instant, except when he's pulling off Michigan. Like, so I don't know if that means that he's going to need more time to adapt, or that he's just so smart that he's going to be able to figure out instantly, because some players can do that. But I think there's just more of a chance that he needs that runtime to get used to living in North America, to the language, to the system of the team. That's going to be, even if they are adapting that system to him, which I've read, there are going to be many changes because he won't have as much freedom. So there's a lot of adjustments, and he's not that 6'3" hyper speedy player. So there's more of a chance of a not struggle, but difficulties that he's going to face. So just have realistic expectations at first. And then I think as the season goes on, he's going to figure it out and become more Michkov, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, what flows into that is he's never had to play an 82 game schedule, and
Yeah,
he's never played even close
and
to
he's
that.
young, like you said. He's 19.
Right. So I think at some point there are going to be points where he is going to have to maybe be sat down for a game, could get overwhelmed, could hit that wall. But I told Flyers fans, if he got 50 points, it would be a really good season. That's
Yeah.
my feeling of it. What is your feeling?
Production is always dependent on ice time and line mates and
Right.
comfort. Like even if he gets 50 points, it depends. If you look at the entire team and you see that he's overperformed expectations, or like he's overperformed the average of the team, or it's a good top 6 production inside the Flyers. Like it's good, but you can't if you take just like Slavkovsky with Montreal, who's a first overall pick, who struggled a lot for a while playing middle six with line mates that didn't really complement his style. Then they put him in the first line, and his spat on the ice was clear for him. Like he knew where to go, how to feed off other talented players. The Flyers have those players, but they don't have an elite team to support him either. So I think 50 points is like good expectation because he's super talented. He's really, really smart, and it's a good production for a rookie, but it's not like 100 points either. So
Right.
you better set expectations that are realistic, and then if he gets above that, it's just a bonus. And I think the team is going to see it like this. But some fans seeing the reputation of Michkov as generational talent might not exactly. I don't consider him to be that level of prospect too. I'm gonna just say it outright. Like I think he's an elite prospect. Maybe he could become better than Connor Bedard, but I think the chance of Bedard being a better prospect is greater, and because of the better tools actually, and the chance of Michkov needing more time to figure it out and have the kind of impact that Bedard had, it's probably going to take more time for Michkov to do that than someone who has more dynamic abilities. So it depends on your line mates. It depends on the environment, how he adapts to the system. So 50 points, that's great. I anticipate that he's going to break that a bit, but we'll see exactly. Like there's a lot of unknown factors and a lot of exciting things to look at, and just his fit inside the team is going to be a great storyline for next season, I think.
Yeah. The one thing I'll follow up with, probably my last question too, is the goaltending. Goaltending in the KHL, not the same as the NHL. So he's going to have to learn that too. He's going to have to learn these guys' tendencies. And I think if you ask me, I think he's going to have to study some film on some of these goalies, because I think it's going to be much, much harder when he's in close and they're closing in on him.
Yeah, and at first, but I think it's one of his biggest talents, reading goalie. It was maybe in his first year, he's going to see these guys not often enough to really read their tendencies, but year 2, year 3, like you're going to
Right.
see him pull off some ridiculous goals because he's going to figure out where the holes are and just remember them. And like he was already doing this in his draft year against players he would see quite often. Like he would be near the goal line and he'd see the goalie just crouch down from his post, and he would just rocket the puck in that hole, like because he expected that tendency and he could act on it. So again, hockey sense, and I think that's really what's going to be carrying his career and his game next season. So yes, again, he might have to adapt at first. That's probably the theme of this podcast: adaptation to the NHL.
Yep.
But I think over time, the tricks and the advantages on the ice is going to see them all and really hopefully become a giant motor of the Flyers offense.
Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see how it goes starting in camp. This was so wonderful. Got a lot of really good information about Michkov, and we'll see what he could do. David, where can people find you out there?
On my Twitter, David ST_Louis. I think I changed that a couple of years ago, and I'm always unsure of what it is exactly, but you can just Google me. And I write for Elite Prospects, EP Ringside's platform, and make videos on YouTube. You should go check out my Michkov breakdown, see if you agree with my opinions on him and how I describe his game. I think there are a lot to be excited about him, and it's really in the details of the game that his game is the most exciting. And I present some of that details, and by watching the video, I think you'll be able to better spot them when he's on the NHL ice. So.
That was a fantastic conversation, right, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, we got to talk about a lot of different things with Michkov, and since there's not a lot of info out there, not a lot of data out there, it was really fun.
Yeah, loved to talk to him. We'll get to your mailbag questions coming up next. It's summer, which always makes me think of baseball. And with the Phillies being exciting this season in a good way and a bad way, sometimes I want to be there in person as much as possible. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to that first pitch. And with killer last minute deals, views from your seat, their low price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those coveted MLB tickets in your town, the summer concerts, and more. My favorite part of the app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute flash deals, and they let you save even more with zone deals where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat for you. Best of all, there's all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, wrapping up with your mailbag questions. And the first one is about a trade rumor that seems to have stuck around a little bit longer than I would have expected. Michael asked, the Flyers were mentioned in the hunt for Trevor Zegras on Top Shelf Hockey. Is it even remotely possible given the comments Torts made about Zegras scoring the fluky goal he scored, or doing the Michigans, I guess, is really
Right.
what it is.
Well, I mean, we talked about how it's in Michkov's arsenal, and if you bring over Zegras, they're going to be
Mhm.
trying it once a game. So for as long as Torts is here, I don't see it. I can see the Flyers having interest, but now that they have another player who's prone to doing those kinds of goals, and we know the coach doesn't like it unless he changes his mind on that, which is unlikely, I'd say it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm not sure, there's space on the team for him right now. I mean, obviously you make space, right? Because this would be a player for player kind of trade
Right.
here. But just the timing of it would seem weird. I think like maybe at the trade deadline or end of next season is a time that maybe that's when you get a
Yeah,
Zegras type player
I can see that.
um, to add to the Flyers. Olson Math asks, is there any chance that Cal Petersen tears up the AHL and the Flyers can trade him for something like a fourth round pick? What do you think, Russ?
There is no chance. Zero chance.
Well, I don't think the chance is zero. I don't think the
It's
chance is
zero.
5% either, but I think it's not zero, but it's pretty close to that, in my opinion. But yeah, I just, especially with the NHL cap hit level, I think, the Flyers would be hesitant to retain salary
Yeah,
in
why would they? They're
case.
costing them more to do it than to. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not going to do that.
they already have the AHL penalty
Right.
on him.
Right.
I just don't see it happening, but I really hope he plays well. All that
Sure.
being said, I want him to play well and support this Phantoms team because
Yeah, I
they
get that.
they will certainly need it this year. Speaking of goalies, I think one of the comments here was related to our Yegor Zavragin conversation and looking to add more goalies to the arsenal here. So at explicit 5800, I hope they take Gabriel Daig in the second round of next year's draft from the Victoriaville Tigers in the queue. Do you know anything about him?
No, I'll tell you what. I'll start watching them just to see, because it's, again, goalies are voodoo. But no, I don't know him yet. I'll become acquainted with him and see what he looks like. He's going to go on my list.
Yeah, he's 17 years old. He'll turn 18 in November. Right now, he's 6'4". So, a bigger guy. He has had some time with the Canada national program, played in last year's Holinka Cup for one game that did not go very well.
No,
Uh,
I remember the
and
name,
he's
but I just can't
yeah,
picture him.
he's got like mixed results in the queue, I would say. But it's a high shooting league, so I'm not
It
sure how
is.
you would evaluate his
Oh,
record there.
he's a little older now too. Like we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
But yeah, I haven't even with the Holinka, I haven't seen enough of him to comment, honestly.
sure. Last question from Josh. What is the chance that the Flyers invite in a veteran to training camp?
Well, I mean, there is always that chance because it doesn't cost you anything, and sometimes you can add some competition to camp. You know, if you wanted to add some competition, if you brought in Nick Cousins, he would amp it up. There would be a level of competition that would be amped up for him to get a job that might be too much for Torts. But it just saying he is that kind of guy, and he's an excellent skater. Like there's nothing, and he's got Stanley Cup experience. Like he is 30, so if you don't want to stick with that, then you can go with Philip Zadina, who never really truly developed, but did have 13 goals last year with San Jose on a bad team. If you're looking for some goals, he's only 24 years old. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah.
worth an invite, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely like a PTO option, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no harm in inviting anybody on a PTO as
No.
long as there's like no real expectation there and unless they do extremely well. And, you know, you can't really lose anything by doing it.
You can't.
No, I do like the Zadina option. I feel like there's just been something missing there from, he was with Detroit
Yeah.
originally.
And then
And
San
it
Jose.
just, yeah, and it just like hasn't stuck. So maybe another chance would do him some good. But
Like if you brought him
yeah,
in and he looked good in camp and you say, all right, you know, you try the guy out. If you bring him in on the minimum, you know, he could be a low minute 15 to 16 goal guy like Daniel Sprong. He's getting
mhm.
that kind of play. You know, there could be a role for him.
All right, that will do it for today's show. We'll be back on Friday with the poll results. So make sure you get those votes in. We're going to talk prospects, tournaments as well. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got a mailbag question, send it in on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.